There's a new sheriff and now a new tariff in town, and Canada and Mexico, they will play ball. The DNC Freak Show has selected a new roster of absolute clowns, and last but not least, the obsession with DEI on the left and the right has hit a fever pitch, and you know I have some final thoughts. All that and more in just a moment, plus a reminder to comment, like, and subscribe to this show on YouTube at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Without further ado, the show starts now. So our neighbors, or more likely our sugar babies to the north and the south, were big mad that President Donald Trump did exactly what he said he was going to do. You know, the groundhog had not yet seen its shadow when Trump slapped both Canada and Mexico with a 25% tariff threat. I don't know if we'll have 6 more weeks of winter, but I can tell you the days of the USA getting royally ripped off are over. But as was to be expected, the sugar baby nations up top and down below did not take it well. Let's start with the Canadians, eh? They are so brave and bold up there with their maple leaves and weird pronunciation of the letter A. They showed their utter defiance by booing during our national anthem. We, with our giant military and superior everything, are just shaking in our boots. And then there was Trudeau, who announced his resignation before he even had a shot at being the governor of the 51st state of Canada. But he thinks the best way to hit the USA where it hurts is by telling Canadians not to vacation here. Ouch, Justin.
And now is also the time to choose Canada. There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon, or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to stay here in Canada and explore the many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer.
I mean, nothing against Canadians, but if you don't come here, we will hardly even notice, eh? I also think it's really ironic Canadians are volunteering not to come to the USA in an act of defiance when it was just a couple years ago when they were flocking here, and especially to Florida in droves, to escape COVID tyranny. But Mexico was also big mad, at least at first, at the tariffs, sure, but mostly because now that we've closed our southern border to illegals, Mexico now bears the burden of the third world roosting in their country for a change. And the Mexicans in America, well, they're exhibiting their displeasure with it all by waving Mexican flags, burning American flags, and taunting people on the streets. So let me be sure I get this. Y'all are waving the flag of the country, Mexico, that you don't want to live in. That's your protest. That's weird stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The sugar baby nations will no longer be sucking off the USA teat or opening their borders so the world can invade our country by way of their countries. No more. Joining me now to discuss that and so much more is Daily Signal Politics editor Bradley Devlin. All right, Bradley, I want to start off with the tariffs. All right, this is a minute-by-minute thing. We already know from this morning that Mexico's like, wait a second here. We'll go ahead. We'll put 10,000 of our troops on the border. We'll try to help you out. Just delay the tariffs. They're already playing ball. There's going to be another discussion with Trudeau later today. Donald Trump's going to be speaking with him around 3 p.m. So it really feels like these tariffs have already done their job, at least the threat of them. But do you think the left is going to feel really stupid since they spent all weekend freaking out about it?
The left and some people on the center right, too. I mean, the Wall Street Journal ran an editorial by the editorial board saying, this is the dumbest trade war in history. And this morning, the dumbest trade war in history begins. Well, by 11 o'clock, that op-ed was a little outdated already because Claudia Sheinbaum agreed with the Trump administration that the Mexican government could be doing more to stop the illegal flow of migrants and fentanyl into the country. This is exactly what happened last time. I don't know how these people don't learn their lesson. Trump threatened Mexico with tariffs and said, you are going to help us achieve our migration policy goals, and you're going to be happy about it because at the end of the day, that means we're not going to slap massive tariffs on you. And Scheinbaum said, okay, we can put 10,000 people there. This is exactly what happened in 2017, right? The Mexican government put troops on the U.S. border in order to deal with migrants already at the border with the Remain in Mexico policy, as well as put troops on where? Oh, their border with Guatemala, because so many of these migrant caravans were coming up from Northern Triangle countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple stuff here. And I'm going to tell you what really frustrates me about all of the pearl clutching on the left and even some on the right about all of this. We're simply correcting an error, okay? It's not like we're being bullies to Canada or Mexico. They've been flooding our country with drugs and illegal immigrants, and they've been getting away with it. Outside of the lopsided trade, that's another discussion. But let's just talk about the people and the drugs. They've had a free-for-all for the last 4 years, and really a lot longer than that. They've had free-for-alls. And now we're finally saying, no, the free-for-all is over. And you know what, Mexico? You've been using our country and using your country to just shuffle people on up through that you don't want to deal with. And now you're not going to do that anymore. Now you're just going to have to be a good neighbor, and you're going to have to keep the undesirables out of your country so that they don't come up through to our country, or you can keep them in your country. But we know that you already don't like keeping them in your country because it's quite obvious you wanted to cycle them on through. If these people that were coming through from these countries from around the world were such great, wonderful, productive people, then Mexico would want to keep them. But they didn't. They wanted to send them on through. But I also think it's interesting. One of the ways that the left justifies illegal immigrations is we need somebody to pick the blueberries for the smoothies and empty out the trash cans. But now, when the threat of tariffs came, you have Democrats saying, well, also guacamole and beer. Let's listen to Chuck Schumer rationalize us getting ripped off for the benefit of Corona and guacamole.
Let's just take Super Bowl Sunday, okay? It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico. It's going to affect your guac, because what is guacamole made of? Avocados, both from Mexico.
All right, so I thought Dylan Mulvaney holding the Bud Light was the death nail for that company, but Chuck Schumer holding up that Corona, I'm sure the folks at Corona were not thrilled with that.
No, great visual aids, Chuck. We really appreciate that. I just want him to name the price of an avocado or a price of a Corona before the Biden presidency and after the Biden presidency. When's the last time you think Chuck Schumer's bought his own Corona or his own avocado? I mean, these people are so full of it. And actually, the right response from American politicians is surprisingly what we heard from Justin Trudeau a minute ago. Oh, guess what? You should be investing in our country, in our manufacturing capabilities. That means maybe foregoing American products like Kentucky bourbon and buying Canadian rye. Well, good thing for Americans, we don't have to substitute with Canadian rye. We can go for the good stuff, the Kentucky bourbon still, and still be participating in our economy. I think it's so funny to see the left just tie themselves in knots. They've lost every single America First bone in their body, and it shows, even with Chuck Schumer's pathetic visual aids.
Yeah, and they're just so mad that when Trump threatens these things, then it works out. And you know, Donald Trump even said, and a lot of the left folks are freaking out because he said, listen, tariffs might cause things to temporarily go up in price, but that's how they work. Eventually, this will help us all out. But it's just the threat of the tariffs that are even working. He doesn't even need to really go through with them, although I'm sure to some extent there's still going to be tariffs put in place, not even just because of illegal immigration and illegal drugs pouring into our country, but also lopsided trade relationships, which is something he's talked about for many years now. And China's also included in that bucket. But one of the things that I found the dumbest of all is, of course, California. You've got people who don't want to be deported, so they show up en masse to protest being deported. Kind of stupid to just gather there and say, like, we're all illegal immigrants, but I get it. It's California. They're celebrated there. If you're trying to garner sympathy, I'm not sure blocking traffic is the way to go about that, but I said it on my Instagram, and I'm just really trying to figure this out. So this, to me, would be like me going to Mexico illegally, waving an American flag because I was pissed off that they were going to send me back to America. It doesn't make sense. If Mexico and the Mexican flag is what you have an allegiance to, just go back to Mexico. Please help me figure out what I'm missing here.
I don't think you're missing anything. I want to return to something that you said previously, which is all these people, if they were all such fine individuals, why don't the countries want them to stay? Well, of course, these people want to go back into California because it's the only place that they can get economic opportunity or whatever ostensible justification it is. And that's not America. America is not an economic zone. It is not some place where you can get a job and send remittances back without any sort of punishment. And you've seen a lot of legislators on the right look into this more. Listen, I'm from Southern California. The traffic is bad enough. I think Tom Homan should be receiving a few calls about these demonstrations. This is just exactly the type of tomfoolery you get when you invite the third world into your country. If you want the third world people, you're going to get the third world antics. It's not a nice thing to say anymore, but that's the way it goes. And Tommy, it reminds us of the Trump era the first time when the media was going crazy about Donald Trump being Hitler and the freedom of the press being assaulted. And yet all of these journalists are just free to say whatever they want about the president and face no repercussions whatsoever. It's the same thing with these migrants. They're saying all these terrible things about the United States when they should be hiding, apparently, because they're all going to be deported, and yet they feel emboldened enough to do this in the streets very, very publicly. It doesn't make any internal logical sense if this is what they were actually afraid of, and they're just going to keep up these antics, and hopefully a lot of them, if they are illegal, will be deported.
Well, you know, and here's my thing about it too. Like, good for California. Like, this is what they foster. And folks over the weekend were like, why is LAPD not doing anything? You don't think that LAPD wants to do something? There was a little bit of a standoff. We're getting reports that maybe they were told to stand down. We don't really know, haven't gotten thorough reporting on exactly what happened and why the police response wasn't stronger. But I would just go to the likely answer, which is it's California, and lawlessness thrives in California. And until those residents there that have already been shellacked with wildfires and mismanagement, now they've got illegals or illegal immigrant sympathizers blocking their traffic, which is already bad, harassing people. It's like, you guys realize that this is what you voted for? It's now slapping you in the face. And quite honestly, maybe this will have an advantageous impact on the hearts and minds of those people that live in California. This is so stupid. Another thing, people who haven't learned their lesson, the DNC. I mean, first of all, that whole thing was so mismanaged. You really only watch it for comedy purposes, but there's a couple wonderful things to come out of it, at least for Republicans. If we're interested in winning elections, I think this is all great for us. But, they're still hyper-focused on gender and identity. Let's take a listen to what we're up against in 2026.
Our rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous elections, our elected officers at this point are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must add 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender.
They're literally taking time to spell out the they-them rules and how they're going to count people who don't consider themselves to be a male or a female. Like, I thought this could have been an SNL sketch if SNL was funny again, but this is really what they're going to triple down on. Wow, they've learned nothing.
They haven't learned anything at all, but we can sit here and laugh about this, Tommy. What really concerns me, though, is look at the structure of how the Democratic Party is governed, right? All of these equity rules, literal quota systems for their highest places in the party. If they run their party like that, don't you think they want the country to run like that? And luckily for Republicans and for anyone who anyone sane, any sane individual, we've seen a rejection of DEI by not only the Trump administration, but also the American public writ large when they gave Trump that mandate victory in November. And we're going to focus on merit. And if the Republican Party and conservatives and Americans of sane mind are focusing on merit, and the Democrats, meanwhile, are focusing on something other than merit, i.e. diversity, I think Republicans will be in a good position moving forward to outperform the diversity hires of the DNC.
But what I think is most interesting about all of this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think their DNC chair is a white male. I know their DNC vice chair is also a white male. So they talk a lot about diversity, but then they pick 2 white males. I mean, that was a lot of talking about the they, thems and all the stuff to pick people that really don't fall into any of those categories. So maybe it's just a lot of talk. I don't know. But speaking of the DNC vice chair, you know, Democrats need to do better with males. They need to do better with young people, particularly young males. We'll put those together. And their solution is David Hogg. Let's take a look.
Yeah! Are you ready to go on the offense? Yeah! Are you ready to go on the offense? Yeah! We have to win back our young people. I am the only candidate in this race for any of these positions that is under 30. We had a 20-point shift to the right of our young people. We must show our young people we give a damn about them, that we support them, and we invest in them. I have raised over $11 million in the past year to support the future of our party, because I don't just tweet, I don't just talk the talk, I also walk the walk and I knock the knock in doors across the country, but I'm counting on you in this moment right now. I need your support. Please vote for me. Thank you so much.
The masculinity was just hitting me in the face, Bradley. It was almost too much for me to handle. It was almost like Joe Rogan on steroids there. How do you think that's going to play with young men that the Democrat Party desperately needs to win back over?
I don't think it's going to play well with young men at all, because there's something inherent with the aesthetics of the Democratic Party right now and the position of the Democratic Party, right? They've carved themselves this lane as the party of the establishment, the old guard, and the permissible culture, right? The Overton window in the Democratic Party is so slim that even if David Hogg wanted to challenge that Overton window and open it up so that more young men might be interested in the party and say, oh, this is a heterodox idea, this is a new idea from the Democratic Party, I haven't heard about that before, he will be rebuffed by all the other people who were just running against him. As for the messages, though, like, after watching that entire bleep show, David Hogg's messages, surprising, were like stronger than many of the other candidates. I mean, most of the other candidates just went up there and said, I'm a black woman and now it's time for you to listen to me. Like, what voter is that winning? And David Hogg actually had an incredible interview with Dave Weigel for Semaphore, actually outlining some of the problems that the Democratic Party has with men. I know this is shocking. I don't think he's going to be successful in this endeavor because, one, he's not well positioned to do it. Two, let's remember his pillow business he started in February of 2021 and then ended in April of that same year. He doesn't have a great track record for sticking with things and seeing them through. But hey, as for the problems with the Democratic Party right now, it seemed like he was the only person, shockingly, acknowledging that they had a problem with young male voters. Sadly, I think the party has no appetite to engage with young men whatsoever.
You know, David Hogg should eat some cheeseburgers, and maybe that appetite, it would kind of get him a little bit of red meat in there. Maybe that'll help. Best of luck to him. I mean, I give credit to anybody who's willing to thrust themselves in the limelight, even if I disagree with them. I personally find him to be an annoying gnat. But listen, good for him for going out there and doing something, especially as a white male. He fits nowhere on the oppression totem pole there, so good for him. For even considering himself to be a pillar of the Democrat Party that has already told white men that they don't want or need them. So good for him, I guess. Last thing I want to talk to you about are some of the confirmation hearings last week. I was on vacation. I was watching them, desperately trying to stream them. I thought that they were great. I'm wondering, in your mind, if anybody stuck out to you as somebody who might have a particularly challenging time, one over the others, of getting through.
Yeah, I think all eyes right now are on RFK Jr. They're on Tulsi Gabbard. RFK Jr. is, I think, in a little bit more of an advantageous position than Tulsi Gabbard. And I say that because Republicans in the Senate do not think this is 2016 all over again, right? A lot of senators thought that they won their elections despite Trump in 2016? Well, in 2024, the mandate was incredibly clear. Donald Trump won the presidency, and Republicans were given the Senate and the House in order to enact the president's agenda. Too much of that fell by the wayside in the first term. And crucial to that victory in November was Bobby Kennedy's endorsement and bringing a lot of middle disaffected voters. I call these people the fringe middle. They don't necessarily believe that taxation is theft, but they definitely believe that the CIA killed JFK. Well, those people are in the Republican camp now because of RFK, and so they know that that choice is important for the coalition. The major lobby, obviously, against RFK is Big Pharma. Big Pharma can make their plans in decades, even longer than that, right? We're talking about centuries of planning for these pharmaceutical companies. They think that they can wait out RFK. For the intelligence folks, the intelligence apparatus, the swamp creatures that love going to the skiff and telling the American people that they've seen more information than they could ever believe, and that's why we need to get involved in the newest foreign war. Well, these people have a tendency to immanentize the eschaton, as they say, and will be more inclined to try to shoot down Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to become the next director of national intelligence. So I think those are the structural forces in the way of both of them. But, you've seen Susan Collins and some other folks saying that they've warmed to the idea of Tulsi Gabbard. So maybe President Trump will get his complete team, and there won't be any confirmations that fall by the wayside.
I hope you're right. The one that I am particularly concerned about is Kash Patel. I just so desperately want him to get in that position. I think it's so crucial and so important. He also happens to be a friend of the show and a friend of mine, and I just think he's brilliant, and I think that he will absolutely clean house in the best way possible, but do it with a level head. And I just think he's a brilliant spokesperson for everything that needs to happen when it comes to federal law enforcement. So I'm very hopeful for him. The last thing I do want to ask you about is the Grammys, just real quick. So I'm not going to get too hot and bothered about Beyonce winning the country album of the year, because I think it's stupid to even care. The Grammys are irrelevant to most people. We don't care about Hollywood. We don't care about the music industry. We have long since cared about their political opinions. We had Lady Gaga saying that trans people are not invisible. Nobody thinks that they're invisible. They stand out to me. But then you've got Alicia Keys saying DEI is our strength, blah, blah, blah. Beyonce winning a country album. Just your quick thoughts on all of it. Do you think that Hollywood and the entertainment industry is going to make any kind of a comeback in terms of influence when they're putting on award shows like that?
Well, first off, lovely rant about Kash Patel. You're absolutely right. And I think the weaponization of government we saw under the Biden administration is going to push Kash through. So I'm very excited about him as well. As for the cultural cachet that events like the Grammys have, I mean, it's down to zero, because what have we seen? We've seen all of these cultural institutions just fall right in line with the bloat and decadence and stagnation of the Democratic Party, right? Hollywood used to be a place that was innovative, that would shake things up, that would shake the culture up. And I think so many people these days just look at Hollywood and say, like, oh, this is just brain slop, right? Like, go to the movies and see the next Marvel movie or whatever, or go, check out Spotify and listen to the latest release by Alicia Keys saying that Trump is once again a bad orange man. They don't have any cultural cachet because they refuse to push the culture in any specific direction. It's not even pushing the culture in a progressive direction, right? Which is, something that I think conservatives should obviously be on guard against, but it's now just found its home in this bubble of American decline that the Democratic Party has become the emblem of.
Yeah, and I'd also say this. I think Hollywood entertainment's been liberal forever, basically. And that's never bothered me so much because I just understood that that's what it was. But at least when I watched the liberals celebrate themselves, I saw glitz, I saw glamour, I saw elegance. I'm somebody who does like hair and fashion and makeup and theatrics and performance, even if I don't agree with the politics. But I don't even like that anymore. People are showing up with haunted houses on their heads. People are showing up naked. They look stupid. They sound stupid. They're having Beyonce win country albums. Beyonce is a talented talented singer and performer. She put out a crap album that was not country. So I think that two things can be true at once. Beyonce is very talented. She is not a country singer. So the whole thing to me is neither here nor there. I think it's a freak show for freaks who like to indulge in themselves, and they don't even look good doing it anymore. So that's my rant on the Grammys. Can't wait for the Oscars. Thank you so much for joining me today. God bless you. God bless America. And, listen, we might have some new tariffs to talk about very soon if the sugar baby nations don't play ball. Great to talk to you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tomi.
My fellow patriots, the left overplayed its hand with DEI, but now the right runs the same risk, and I'll tell you why, because it's time for final thoughts. The left got DEI drunk in 2020. There's no doubt about it. Somehow, after the death of George Floyd, the sudden cure-all for racism became open and blatant discrimination against white people, and especially white men. Shocker, that didn't cure racism, it just rebranded it. Skin color, pronouns, and the oppression totem pole became the new bar for hiring, firing, and everything else. It was stupid then, and it's still stupid now. However, what I'm about to say might piss off some of my fellow conservatives, but I do not care. The right now also runs the risk of overplaying our hands when it comes to DEI, or rather the absolute obsession with it. This became abundantly obvious to me in the aftermath of the horrific and tragic Black Hawk and plane collision over the Potomac. Dozens of people are dead. We need to know what caused the horrible error to occur and make sure it doesn't happen again. However, the number of folks, particularly on X, who immediately started to proclaim it had to be DEI, that was too much. And then with zero facts or evidence started putting out there that one of the Black Hawk pilots was trans, to the extent that the actual trans person they tried to blame it on had to come out and make a video about it. Come on, y'all. What the hell? X is great, but some of y'all are doing too much, posting fake and dumb crap just to get attention and farm ad revenue. Take a beat to get the facts before you grift for the sake of the grift. And to make matters worse, when the actual female Black Hawk pilot's name was released, some of these same folks immediately proclaimed the crash had to be her fault because she was a woman. Really, if this is the social media right, I do not want to be a part of it. Eliminating DEI is not about eliminating diversity. It's about prioritizing competency over diversity. But it feels like some who proclaim to be conservative have twisted that notion and are now just looking to blame anything and everything on diversity. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't help the cause at all. It's actually a giant distraction from the cause and will alienate folks that we just added to the tent. All this to say, we can return our government and the private sector back to merit over identity, but we don't have to be a-holes about it in the process. But those are just my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of the show on Fox Nation at your leisure. Also, please be sure to check out 100 Days on Fox Nation every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.